Hey, hey there. I'm Gavin. This is the OneMent vlog, and today we're going to be talking about from torment to joy. And what is torment? What is joy? How do you do that? And let's just dive in. So if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm excited you're here. And really what I try to do is share something in my life that is going on with me that I think you can relate to, that I think maybe you're going through now or you've gone through, and that would be helpful. So this is about you. It's not about me, but I'm using my life as like the example. I'm like the guinea pig, so to speak. And here's what happens with torment. Okay, and here's what I mean by that description, is we tell ourselves these constant stories about ourselves. And then we make them very elaborate, we make them very detailed, and then we believe them. Like hook, line, and sinker, like we dive in to these stories and we believe them, right? And I'm going to talk about the ramifications of that. So let's just talk about like one of my stories. If you've watched any of my other recent vlogs, and one of my life stories, one of my triggers, catalysts, it keeps repeating, is extremely frustrating that you would find out on other videos, is having to do with like finances, having to do especially around jobs, and even more like deeply, and to be transparent, I've come to realize I have a little bit of like an authority figure with like bosses, right? I'm this freedom seeker, like at heart, like I'm an entrepreneur, but I've always been good at sales because I can connect with people and I serve them and they can feel that I care about them. And so I've been successful at that. And a lot of times I've enjoyed it, but it hasn't always been like, you can probably relate to this in your job. There's things you like about it, but it hasn't always been like, oh, this is what I would do, all the time if I had nothing else to do. And so I've had all these stories around it. But the main story that is coming up for me recently that has repeated in the past, my wife will remind me, is that like, I'm having these feelings of that, and this is not anything about this person. I hope they never watch, this, because this is all about me. I take full responsibility. But I have these stories like that my boss doesn't like me, that my boss has it out for me, that I'm not getting a fair shot, right? And like in my business world, we're giving appointments and like I have to, it seems like my story is that I have to travel farther, that I'm getting less appointments, that possibly my appointments are different than others people. And hopefully you even just hear on that little tidbit, because I don't need to go down that. That's just a quick explanation. That's the story, right? That like somehow it's unfair, and that, I have this underlying issue that like my boss is like causing my success, or my boss is influencing my happiness, or my boss is like in control of my abundance. Like, do you hear that? Like, and how would you apply that to your life, this story? And so the ramifications of that is a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, torment. I mean, I come up with these elaborate like stories of like, oh, this and oh, this, and they're thinking this, and this is what they mean, and like it's very judgmental. It brings a lot of like pain and frustration and anger, if you can relate to that. And here's the thing, I don't know if any of it's true. I've had to deal with this, but like as a spiritual student, I've had this spiritual ego, I would call it, that like I can analyze things and I know what other people are thinking, like, and that like when they do this, it means this, right? And the key word is ego there. I don't really know what they're thinking. I don't know their motivations. And I don't know like why they do what they do. So when I'm coming up with those stories that are negative, then I'm tormenting myself for absolutely no reason. And I'm going to share with you like what I'm working on to get out of this and get back into the joy. Yet what happens is I make up the story, and then I have this feeling that is usually very negative. And then that's what happens and what manifests in and it's just like this cycle and just breaks out, like just keeps happening. So what I want to share with you is that, in that story, in the realization that I really don't know, this is a Course in Miracles concept and teaching, that like our ego, we want to think that we know. And what that is like, that means if we know what's going on, then we're in control, and then we can manipulate it or change it or alter it in the way we think needs to happen. So therefore we can feel powerful, abundant, happy, right? And ultimately my boss, and this is huge, my boss has no impact, control, power over who I am, what I believe, and how I feel. And I would got on the couch in the video with us today. But what I want to share with you is that whatever's happening in your life, whether it's at work, whether it's in a relationship with your family, with kids, with whatever finances it may be, that event isn't dictating who you are. That event is a story that we continue to buy into, that only leads to pain and torment. And it is the ego's way to keep us blinded, to keep us to not see who we really are, right? And what we've been taught all along is to think that when things go the way we want, when we make the money we want, when we have the goal, when we get the result, then we feel complete. Then we feel good about ourselves. Then we feel like we're worthwhile, right? And that is the lie. And that's the lie that we all live in so many different ways, the story that is absolutely not true, okay? So back to my boss situation and going through that's the share. And now what's the how to get to joy? What am I working on so I can get back to my oneness? I can get back to the realization of who I really am, and then come from source, come from truth, okay? So the first step is that I have to realize I'm tormenting myself. I have to realize and have the awareness. It's the awareness that it's a story, and that it's a story of my making that is not accurate. Okay. And in a lot of ways, that's reclaiming truth. That's reclaiming my power. That my manager, my boss is just playing their role in my story, in my movie that is appearing so real in front of me, of which I'm the director, I'm the actor, I'm the producer. This whole thing has nothing to do with my boss. But it feels to blame them, to get mad at them, to make it about them, It's just this drama, and it's a terrible, frustrating feeling. Awareness that you're in that you're blaming, that you're not happy, that you're angry. Feel that, know that, because that denial doesn't help. That's what the world is kind of doing, is just this denial that just keeps getting projected onto the screen of life. And no wonder the insanity shows up, okay? Then, number 2, what I do is I make a choice. We make that choice. Do we want to feel that way? Do we want to believe that story? Or do we want to choose to hand it over? And if one of the Course in Miracles concepts is if we had the ability to, on our own, come up with the answers, we would already do that. But we're stuck in this cycle of thinking we have it all figured out. And then we do all these ego things in search of nothing. So we seek and we never find, because the things we think bring us happiness are just the trap, right? So it's really powerful to hand it over to the universe, hand it over to God, hand it over to the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to, look at and be hey, I could use some help here. I am not seeing things with my right mind. I am not feeling how I know what's possible. And I would like to shift this. I would like to change this feeling. I would like to change this limiting belief. And what happens is that when we do that, we're handing it over to truth. We're handing it over to what's real, like the real reality, not ours that we've made up, not the story we've bought into. But we're starting to lean into God, into like faith and love and that oneness, right? And then what I try to do is whether it's listening to a video, listening to a meditation, listening to doing something like maybe yoga or exercising, I'm in some way changing my mind and physical feelings back into what's real, back into that energy, that vibration of truth. And really what I'm trying to do is not need anything needing to happen in that moment, except for the fact that I'm reclaiming my power and I'm moving back into joy. I'm moving back into like who I really am without needing anything out there to happen a certain way. And that's the thing. It's like, we seek these things like, okay, if this happens, then I'll be good. It's all conditional. And that's the practice. And I'll be talking about this a lot in a lot of different ways. But when I come back to that presence of source, of that knowing, of that feeling of absolute joy, and I've done a lot of things like this morning to get to this point, like sharing this video, that like my energy is very high. I'm very optimistic. I'm in remembrance. I'm closer to God rather than in light, rather than the darkness and the shadows, because I've done what I just described. I've moved through that. And guess what? The circumstances haven't necessarily changed yet. The results, like, oh, I want this, but I've let go of that need. And now what I can do is what I really want, what we all really want. Like all the results, all the goals, it's like we want to feel our truth. We want to feel abundance and joy. We want to love. We want to feel connected. So now I'm in this, vibration to where I can show up on this video. I can show up on what I'm going to do next. I'm going to show up on an appointment later. And I can like send love to my boss, knowing who that person really is, not the story I've made up about them. And I can bring love to my day. And that is what I'm after. What can I give? How can I go about my day knowing the truth of who I really am? That's oneness. That's what we're teaching here. That's this journey that if you're watching this, that like I'm, learning, and like you're here because that's what you want to remember and experience. Also, I think maybe not, if you're not, hey, maybe at the wrong channel, but like I think you are. And I get you. I understand you. That's why I want to be transparent. And like you can tell like I'm in a good space. There's gonna be other times you're like, oh, he's not in good space, because I'm gonna, share it all. So go back on those 3 steps. Realize you're in the story. Have that awareness. How are you feeling? Like really, go into that. Analyze, is it sadness? Is it anger? All the emotions. Number 2, make the choice to hand it over to a higher power. Like it's this, I'm going to let you deal with this story. And that is like a form of forgiveness. And that is forgiveness in A Course in Miracles. And that you're letting go of the story. It's an understanding that it's not real, that you're willing to like give it up, which can be a little scary because our stories, we think that's who we are. Whole nother video. And then, we're willing to like shift back into that source, that love, that joy, that abundance. And what's so cool about it, like I mentioned, is there's nothing that needs to happen. There's no result. There's no, like, you can have that happen because that is who you are. That is what you want. That is your ultimate. And we can have that peace and joy right now. Okay. So trying to keep these videos shorter. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed, I invite you to subscribe. Like this, would love that. That gets it out there. And comment. I'd love to hear from you. Like what did you get out of this? What are you going to work on? What are some of your, catalysts or triggers that you're working on that you want to use this video to apply to. So signing off. Got so many long list of things to come, and I'm happy and excited to be on this journey with you. So Harper and I will see you soon, right, Harper? We're gonna see them soon. Okay, all right, bye-bye.